I'm not sure how I'm going to make dinner tonight. We're 3 days away from a paycheck. Our fridge is empty. And our neighbor called and said, we have a moving truck outside. Our fridge and our freezer are full. Will you please come over and empty it and just take all of this?
What's up, boys and girls? Welcome to the Let's Give a Damn podcast. I'm your host, Nick LaPara, and you're here. Thanks so much for showing up. Thanks so much for listening in. This is the podcast about people who give a damn, by people who give a damn, and for people who give a damn. I'm so incredibly pumped for you to hear from my guest today, Nicole Devereaux. Nicole is a conversational intelligence coach based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is a former home of mine. I lived in Minneapolis for 4 years. That's not relevant to this intro, so back to Nicole. I met Nicole and her family years ago, and she has encouraged me over and over and over again during our friendship. I think you'll have a little more sense as to why and how she encourages me so much after listening to our chat. She's amazing. I wanted to have Nicole on the podcast because during a dark period in her life a few months ago, she decided to do something really, really bold. I won't give away too much here, but during a time when most people give up or spend a lot of time thinking about themselves, she decided to think about others. And that's truly, truly amazing and something that I want each one of you as damn givers in all stages of life, something I want you to grow in. She's wonderful, and I know you're going to be deeply encouraged by her. So let's get right into it. Here's my conversation with Nicole Devereaux. Let's go. I'm so excited to have my friend Nicole Devereaux on the Let's Give a Damn podcast. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
I'm so excited to do this. We've been trying to do it for quite some time, and we'll get into why that couldn't happen at the moment. You've been so busy, I've been so busy, but we're finally doing it months later, and I can't wait to share who you are and your story with the audience. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Of course. I'm excited to champion what you're doing because I think what you're doing and what you have done in the midst of all the ups and the downs and the struggles of life, I think will really encourage so many listeners here today. So why don't we begin? Share some of your story with us. Share who you are. What are the kinds of things that made you into who you are today, the people, places, things, whatever it may be. And stop short of when we met in Minneapolis, but just give us kind of a framework of why you are the way that you are.
Okay. Why I am the way that I am. Big existential questions.
That's right. That's right. Nothing scary. Nothing scary here today.
Okay. Well, I'm about to turn 40, which I know we're going to get to later in the podcast.
Yep.
So we'll just start there. I've been alive almost 40 years. I think, the biggest parts of my story that impact who I am today as an almost 40-year-old are my large family. I grew up as the oldest of 5 in a Greek, Italian, Irish family. And I like to name those backgrounds because there's a lot of stereotypes that go with them, and they're basically all true when you look at my family. So
Yes.
Go ahead and assume away.
Yes.
That's okay. I think one of the core things I like to talk about with my family is that we like to argue a lot and we like to eat a lot. And so those two things, I mean, really genuinely, I'm a big believer that we are born with certain personalities and then those are nurtured or tried to be squashed in our environments. And my inherent personality is very strong, confident, and argumentative, and that was then reinforced in my family setting. I really spent most of my young adult life, so up until the age of 19, believing that I could do whatever I wanted, that I was a good person, that that I could change the world, and that a lot of that I honestly believe was inherent. It's not like our family had conversations like that around the dinner table. I remember being in 5th grade and being on the phone with somebody and telling them like one of the reasons I hate shopping is that when I go into a mall or a store, all I think about are people who don't have anything. And that is like, I don't know where that came from. That was not, that's just a thing for me. And obviously there's some unhealth in that too. You can take that to an extreme. So I'm not trying to lift that up as a like, what a woke fifth grader I was.
So let me stop you real quick. Usually, when someone says something like that, because I am very similar to you in that way,
Mhm.
and I've had times of real health and times of real unhealth in that area where, again, like you pointed out, you can take that to the nth degree and it can make you miserable, right? But
Yeah.
I can point back to, and I'm not trying to, I just want to ask again to really see if you can pull something out, because I can point back to certain things. One was growing up in Guatemala, and just different things that were in my path that kind of helped me become that. I'm sure that I already had maybe the foundational characteristics and talents and skill set for that, but there were these things that kind of birthed that. So there was nothing in you can't remember like a person or a thing that happened that kind of sparked that, or that was truly just who you were at your core.
Yeah, I actually have spent a lot of time thinking about this, so it's always, anybody's best guess.
Sure.
My parents were very generous people, and we were a very solid middle class family. I never had an experience of my parents saying we can't afford that, or you shouldn't get that, or you shouldn't want that. So what I wonder, this is my hypothesis about myself, is that I wonder if, because even from an extremely young age, I was a very outspoken and confident person. And especially as a little girl, I had an ego that was bigger than warranted, I think, as a young person. I guess I wonder if being so confident and so loud at a young age, I was being confronted with kind of being told I was too much.
Mm,
And so I wonder if I internalize that too much to, the unhealthy place of, well, I don't deserve to buy myself something even if I can, because there's somebody else who has too little. And that's totally a hypothesis, because of course that was not the way it was ever worded to me.
sure.
Um, but when I think about it as an adult, going to an unhealthy level of denying myself, I do wonder if some of it has been about, because I'm so much and I intimidate people, or I'm too confident, or, at my worst, I'm too arrogant. Maybe I can counteract that by denying myself something. I don't know.
Got it.
It's a good question to ask.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get more clarity on that, let me know. But I think
I'll try.
I think it's fine that you maybe can't point back to it. I think that's always interesting, because I always what I always try to find out with everybody I meet was there a big, like, kind of, was there a big moment, like a big
Mm,
explosion in your life that caused you to think, to begin giving a damn? Because I think that's what you were doing back then. There might have been some health or unhealth in different seasons, but I think that's what that was. And I guess, yeah, you're one of the few people that I've met that can't point back to, like, oh, I read this book or I had this conversation. And so where was all this happening I met you in Minneapolis. Did you grow up there?
no, I did not. So my family moved 4 times when I was growing up, all within the United States. I tend to say I grew up in Jersey because I was there from 4th grade through my freshman year of high school, which I would consider a very formative
Very, very
time.
formative years.
And then again, going back to especially my Italian heritage, because there's a lot of Italians in Jersey, and my Greek side of the family was in New York City at the time. And I definitely have more of an East Coast attitude about me. So I feel like that explains a lot of things when I say I grew up in Jersey. So yeah, for me, I think of it more as my family unit, not necessarily the physical location that I was. Because I liked to travel. I liked moving. I liked growing up in different places. As an adult, had a lot of opportunity to travel outside of the US. So I definitely see myself as somebody that's not attached to a place, because I really am curious about other places and people.
Do you think it will be important at any point to find, and maybe that's the season of life you're in right now, I don't know, because what you just said resonated with me deeply up until raising kids,
Yeah.
where, like, because most people know my story. I don't want to reiterate the whole thing, but I grew up all over the world, really, and all over the US. I mean, my wife and I have been married for 11 years. We've lived in the past 10 years of living in homes, we've lived in 10 different homes, 10 years, 4 different states. And
Yeah.
then, and before that, it was all over the world, right? And so I've always on the one hand, loved that about myself, that I'm not too attached anywhere. I was born in New York and, grew up in Guatemala, but I'm not really attached anywhere. I love that. But I also look at people in my community and that I know that have deep roots somewhere, and they have something that I'm not going to say I'll never experience, but I've definitely not experienced it to this point. Because of my personality, I get to know people really quickly and well,
Right.
and
Yes.
I have a large relational plate, but that's not a substitute for, knowing a place for 20, 25, 30, 40 years, and
Mhm.
so do you ever think you'll get to that place where you find home, or are you fine with sort of living a sojourner vagabond life?
Yeah, I think that for me, the way that I come at that question is really from the angle of where do I need to be to grow? And if growing means I need to stay in one place and that's what's going to challenge me and expand, my perspectives or my impact or influence, then that's where I want to be. But if leaving and being in different places is what's going to do that, then that's what I want to do. So I guess the answer is I'm really not attached to a place because I'm willing to go where I need to be to grow. So that's really
Got
the
it.
principle. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we sort of met during a transition in y'all's life. So we met in Minneapolis toward the end of our time there. We were there.
Yeah.
We lived there for 4 years, and beginning of, I think it was probably late 2011, beginning of 2012, we met and were part of the same faith community for a few months. And you guys were around that time beginning to think about a big move in your lives to New York City, sort of back to your East Coast roots. Tell me about that journey, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, some of that journey leads into why you decided to do this big thing, which I mean, people are going to see it in the show notes, whatever, but I want to I want to
Sure.
build this crescendo to,
Thank you.
what you did and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So did things happen during that time, or what was that move to New York City like, and how was your time there? Because I know it was amazing and difficult all at the same time, right?
Yeah. So just to give your listeners a tiny bit more context,
Yeah, please.
so up until the age of 20, I was a really staunch atheist, kind of going back to that idea of like, I felt like I was a good person. I really felt confident I could do anything with my life. I had no need of, I'm a rebel at heart. So the idea of organized religion and having anybody have authority over me was just like the biggest, turn off to anything
Yeah,
that I might have chosen. And then when I was 20, I had kind of a radical encounter with Jesus. That's really the only way I can explain it. And I was faced with this choice and just kind of was like, well, I was a good person before I met Jesus. I might as well try this out. And if it doesn't work out, I can always, go back to who I was. Like it's not going to ruin my life, probably.
sure.
So I made this choice after my 20th birthday to follow Jesus, and that hasn't stopped. So part of that was my husband and I partnering with another couple to start a church in Minneapolis in 2006. And when we started that church, we actually had a pretty strong sense that that was not going to be the end for us, that we were going
Mm,
to end up leaving and starting another church. Very wide open to what that meant or when it was going to be. But we started in 2006 with that sense. And so we were very open with our partners and with the church that we didn't anticipate being there long term, which was really a gift because then in 2011, when we felt very suddenly out of the blue, quite surprisingly called to do this, to start the next church in New York City, nobody really batted an eye,
mm.
which is a great thing to have a community of people that you've invested in for 5 years, say, yeah, do it. That fits you. We've been waiting, or not waiting, but anticipating this
Yeah, sure.
day,
Expecting that to
and
happen.
we're behind you. So yeah, so doing that, it was a surprise to us. The process of getting to New York was hard. So we were called in August of 2011 and we didn't leave until August of 2014.
Mm.
So that 3-year journey, and in those 3 years, not only did we have a lot of personal and vocational things come up, but we had our second child, which we were not anticipating. It took us 3 years to conceive with both of our children. So that was a very unexpected thing to happen in the midst
Yeah, sure.
of that. Yeah. And yeah, I think New York City, it was interesting you asked about home and will I ever want to be somewhere, because New York did feel like that for me.
Mm,
Literally the day we arrived, I I took a picture of that day and I posted it on social media, and I had people reach out to me and say, "I haven't seen you look like that, like, since I've known you. I've never
wow.
seen you look that way." And it really, to me, I felt like symbolized this fact that I felt more at home in that place than I had ever felt anywhere I lived my whole life. And you can tell I'm tearing up because I left. So it's
Yeah.
a hard place. So yes, being in New York was amazing and incredible for all the reasons people could imagine, and maybe some reasons you can't. We had two young children, and a lot of people think New York is a difficult place to raise a city, and it is, and it's also a wonderful place. And just really quickly, one example of that is the homeless population in New York is very high. And of course, there are a lot of complicated factors that go into homelessness. But because we walked in New York and we didn't drive in a car, we literally walked by homeless people in our neighborhood every day. And the same people sat in the same places. So we could actually have conversations with them. We knew their names. We could hear their stories. We could have meals with them. And my kids were just encountering and engaging with homelessness
Yeah.
in a way simply because we had to walk. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't something we just drove by, and it wasn't just a faceless person, because since it was the same people, they were part of our community the way everybody else that we saw every day when we took a walk was. And I think that there was just a real gift in that. And my kids getting, and I mean, honestly, we were blessed with homeless people that were really honest with us about their situation. So my kids got to hear about addiction. They got to hear about mental illness. They got to hear about a lot of things, just by being in proximity to it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do. I do. I think I've shared this with you all, and it's sort of common knowledge that I'm from New York. My wife is from Pennsylvania. Traveled all over the place. She's traveled less than I, but I've taken her on quite the journey since we've gotten married as well. And our dream is we got engaged in New York City. Our dream has always been to you know move to New
Yeah.
York City and never leave, right? Which I think
Yeah.
was probably your dream as well, right? Like it was just like go there and like you said, you felt like this is home. It truly is, well, it is home for you too, geographically. You're from Jersey and I'm from New York. Like that is like I'm a Northeasterner in every way, shape, or form. We've kind of tossed around the idea of moving to LA for some things that I would love to do that LA makes it easier to do. And people every single time they're like, you are the opposite of you guys are
Yeah.
just not LA people. You're New York people. But when I've talked to we've had a bunch of people say, "Don't move there with your three kids. That's the worst fucking idea you could ever do. Like, don't raise them there." And they give all these reasons, right? They've got this long list of reasons for not raising kids there, and almost every one of those reasons that they say don't move there for are the reasons that I want to move there
Mm,
for. Not because and I don't think you either. Like, not that you want to intentionally put your kids in danger or in harm's way, but I, as a kid that grew up in Guatemala, at the time one of the most dangerous countries in the world, I know how much I have benefited from seeing hard things and having to grapple with those hard things, having to process through them. All the things that you're saying regarding New York City, I'm tracking with you for sure.
yeah. Well, and something for people too, because of course, let's remember I'm mourning the fact that we left.
Right, right, right.
So
And I
something that I guess I want to just touch on is, because of proximity, I was able to have conversations with my kids that, aren't as obvious. We're living temporarily in a suburb in St. Paul, but I do feel like something that anybody can do is be intentional about those conversations.
yeah,
And honestly, it wasn't just about exposing my kids. It's part of the conversation is sitting with my kids, and having them ask, well, why aren't we doing this for that person? Why aren't we doing that? And for me having to face, I do think about that. And every day I make a choice and I wonder, did I make the right choice with that
sure.
person? And we can be having those conversations with our kids anywhere we live, and we can be intentional about that. So New York City maybe forces the conversation, but just for all of you who aren't living in New York, who still want to have these conversations. It just takes the intentionality. So, yeah, so New York was awesome in a lot of ways. The other thing that people will tell you about New York, and everybody who lives there does say this, it's also a pressure cooker. And the
Sure.
level of intense pressure that you feel simply existing in that city is off the charts. I don't know it anywhere else in this country. I do think that it is somewhat similar to people who live in a cross cultural environment overseas. Just the intensity of how to get through every single day is just really high. And I would say that being in New York, for me, for the first time in my life, I deeply, deeply experienced my worst days and my greatest joys at exactly the same time.
Wow.
And I think in my head, I theoretically thought that could happen, especially, for people who don't know, like as Christians, we talk about suffering and joy a lot commingling. So it was certainly a theory in my head, but I would say that the time we were in New York for me was almost a daily experience of my lowest low and my highest high happening right at the same time. And that was a growing pointing back to what I said earlier, that was definitely a growth experience.
Yeah. So speaking of low lows and high highs, you decided to do something really crazy a few
Yes,
months ago. You decided, and let me just lay this out and correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like a pretty simple formula, but I might mess it up. You
sure.
decided that you wanted to raise $40,000 in the 40 weeks leading up to your 40th birthday. Correct?
Yes.
I remember months ago when you said that, I had two feelings. One was like, hell yeah, like go girl, like you can do this. The other one was like, that's $1,000 a week. Like
Mm,
it's a pretty intense goal for
mhm.
someone that I think you would admittedly say, like, you don't have a huge platform, right? You've got
Oh,
great
no.
community, great friends and family, but you don't have a huge platform. You're not a celebrity. You haven't written a book. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that would even seem ambitious for somebody with a bigger platform to do. But then you came out and said $40,000 in the 40 weeks leading up to your 40th birthday. So tell us
Yes.
all about that. Why did you do that? And how's it going? And what is going on?
Thank you. Yeah, so last year on my 39th birthday, which is, in July, I was at possibly the lowest place of my life. My husband and I were considering stepping down from leading the church we had started. We were considering leaving ministry altogether, which then was pushing the conversation of leaving New York. So those 3 things alone were,
Yeah, it's huge.
really huge, huge things coming up. That was in the midst of what had been, I would say, at least at that point, 2 years of very intense struggle in our marriage. So we'll have been married 19 years this year.
Hmm.
And alluding to what I said earlier about my personality, nothing I do is easy, and marriage is certainly one of those things. We didn't go into marriage with any pie in the sky, rose colored glasses. We were warned and admonished and encouraged quite lovingly many times in our premarital and in our early years of marriage that we were going to have a hard time. So it hasn't been a surprise to us at any point, but certainly when you've been in it 15, 16 years, you start to like hope that it will get a little easier. And so for it to have felt like it actually got harder and more difficult a couple years ago, was just kind of heart crushing for
Hmm.
me. I'm not one of those people. I don't have a work-based mentality of like, hey, I put in the work so I deserve good things. But when it came to my marriage, I realized I did feel that way. My husband and we were married 8 years before we had kids, and we spent those 8 years doing marriage retreats 4 times a year, getting marriage counseling, getting mentored. We continued the mentoring and the counseling after having kids, even though we couldn't do as much marital retreating as we would have liked.
Sure.
And so I felt like we put in the work. We weren't lazy about this. So, man, if we're going to put in that kind of work and still be in this place, like what is going on?
Yeah.
So we had that intense kind of situation. And then, as you know, and any parent knows, like to have that going on and still be trying to create like a safe, secure place for your kids. And then we're having vocational and life questions. And then there were just a lot of other personal things that I, out of respect for other people involved, don't really want to get into. But I was just flat out depressed and not functioning on my birthday last year. I couldn't imagine being in a darker place. I'm not a suicidal person, but I was longing for death. I was the
Mm,
person going to bed saying, I don't want to wake up in the morning. Like, please, God,
mm,
let me not wake up in the morning. When you're in that place, actually being around people that you love can be harder because you feel like just the fact that you feel so dark is actually being highlighted by being around people who you feel like I should be happy around these people because I love them and I care about them. And the fact that I'm not is just showing how much I'm failing or how short I'm falling. And so it just like I just felt totally alone. I felt totally hopeless. And in the middle of that, or in the midst of that, so I don't know where the middle was because honestly, I
sure.
probably had been feeling that way for a few years. Um, in the midst of that, I just started asking, what do I know is true? Because the thing about feelings, not just depression, but any feelings, our feelings can lie to us, right? Because they're interpretations of what we're experiencing. So it's not that the feelings aren't valid, but they're not always true. And I just felt like everything is hard right now. I can't make it be easier and I can't make it feel easier, but if I knew what was true, then at least I could have something to cling on to. And in that moment, what was ringing loud to me as true was that I have actually been given so much more than I deserve in this life.
Mm,
And I started thinking about all of the gifts that I had and I had been given. There were people who were sending us care packages, sending us food. There were people and I've done some social media videos about this, but I am like the recipient of so many miracles in the last 20 years of my life. And the thing about a miracle is like I don't deserve it. I didn't make it happen.
yeah.
And it didn't happen because like I put in my penny and it came out. You know what I mean? And I just
Didn't you say, was it a recent video that you shared where you said that you guys were out of food and somebody called, one of your friends said, like, oh, we're moving and we've got a fridge full of stuff? Was that
Yes.
you?
Oh, yes, it was we were I
That's
was
wild.
literally like, "I'm not sure how I'm gonna make dinner tonight. We're 3 days away from a paycheck. Our fridge is empty." And our neighbor called and said, "We have a moving truck outside. Our fridge and our freezer are full. Will you please come over and empty it and just take
That's
all of
insane.
this?"
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that, and I've got probably 1,000 of those stories. And so in the middle of being so dark and depressed and hopeless, I was remembering those things and I just kind of felt like, you know what? I'm empty right now and nothing feels good, but I bet that I could still do good and I bet that I could still give. And I just I want to give as an act of hope for where I'm going to be 1 year from where I am right now. So that's where it came from. And of course, there was every reason in the world not to do it because we did end up stepping out of that church leadership. We did end up leaving the city that we loved. We are still working on our marriage, like major, major transitions that are bringing more stress into our life. I don't have a platform, like you said. Because I've been in ministry for 15 years, I've actually spent the last 15 years asking people for money so that I could live. We were living on the generosity of other people, giving financially to us, whether directly or through the church, whatever, but it's still other people's generosity. And so to now switch to this other act of giving, yeah, there was also all the reasons in the world to say no. And then I thought, and this is really where that let's give a damn, I think, really kind of can hit home for me. I've spent 40 years having excuses of why I didn't give generously as I wanted to, you know?
Mm.
I spent my life saying, I don't have $10,000 to give to that. I don't have $100 to give to that, or I don't have time, or I don't live there, or I don't know enough about that, or I don't have any experience with that. And it just felt like, well, I've been making excuses my whole life. I literally have probably the best excuse in the world right now not to do it. So I might as well do it now. Like it's not going to get any worse.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. I love. I'm always trying to find different ways to communicate, and I'm always listening for people to communicate the "let's give a damn" sort of message in different ways, right? And that's one way to say it is you had every reason to say no, but you said yes, and people that defy the odds say yes
Mm,
every single time. Like you name a story, you name a project, you name a goal, and every single time there were odds stacked against him or her or whatever, and they said yes. And they went ahead and did it because you could have said any of those things would have been incredibly valid excuses. We're
right.
moving out of state. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're doing. My marriage is still not amazing. We don't have jobs. We don't have all these things, right? And you didn't say, let's raise $1,000 in 40 weeks. You said, let's raise $40,000 in 40 weeks. And so you saw the odds and you said, screw it. Like, we're going to do it, right? And I love, I'm always trying to encourage people. Yes, I'm all about mental health and like watching your mental health and self-care and all that stuff. You shouldn't say yes to everything.
Yes.
But so many times it is just the thing that I'm trying to find different and better ways to communicate it, right? Because I also don't want to let people off the hook because the
Mm,
same people, you can easily say no to too many things in the name of self-care and I need to take care of myself, when I think you need to balance it with no, like life is hard and we need to do hard things. Like again, anybody that ever did anything great did hard things in the process, right?
mm,
And so it's always, I think, self-awareness, getting to know ourselves better, and bringing around like trustworthy mentors and friends and community to kind of stop us if we're going too far or not far enough. But I love how you communicated that. Like there's so many reasons not to do it, and you went ahead and said yes anyway. That's truly, truly amazing and admirable and commendable. So, what are you the money? How are you doing
yes.
percentage wise? What are you giving to? How's it going?
Thank you. Yeah. So one thing I realized right away was that I had to actually not be super attached to the outcome. I had to say, if I only raise $10,000 and I don't hit 40, that's still $10,000 that I
Yeah,
gave that
truly.
I wouldn't have given, right? I mean, how many people who, especially in my situation where I'm not even making $40,000 a year. So
Right.
how many people who don't even make 40 can say I gave 10? You know what I mean? And
Right.
so right away, I just really had to keep telling myself, this is a big goal. It sounds cool, but I can't let it be about I have to hit that 40 or I didn't make it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was one thing. And with that in mind, I've raised, so I was at almost 21. And then last week I raised over six. So I think I'm somewhere around 27,000 right now that's
Amazing.
been given away. Yeah, that is amazing, right? That's
Yes.
it's so great. And the truth of the matter is it hasn't, the bulk of that was actually not my friends and family. It was not people who were in my small my small circle or platform that I had. The biggest give was a completely cold ask. I was walking a dog in New York City and a name came to my mind of a person that does not know me, who I just felt like might be interested. And I did a cold ask where I asked them to give $5,000 and I suggested three organizations. I have eight, and I picked three that I thought would be a good fit for the person. And they came back and said, I want to give 5,000 to each one of those three.
Oh my word.
Right. So that was this is a fluke is the wrong word, right? But that came from a cold ask. That was not me blasting on social media. It was not me asking people who are close to me and love me and want to, help my mental health improve. That was me. I'm going to say this unashamedly, but that was me just being very bold and saying, all I can do is ask, and that person's response is up to them. And if they say no, I'm not any worse off than I was. I didn't have that
No.
$5,000 before I asked.
Right.
And I asked for 5 and I got 15, so that was a good day
And
when
then
that
and then
happened.
yeah, no, that's incredible. I hope everyone that's listening right now is encouraged to take bold steps, right? And then I saw you this past weekend on because what did you do just recently? You gave away a trip,
Yes, yes.
in to raise. You wanted to raise $5,000, and then one person was going to win a trip to Kenya, right, or Uganda, Kenya.
Yeah. So the organization Amani Collective is based in Kenya, and they empower Kenyan women, particularly single or disabled or widowed, like the forgotten women, with job training, employment, community. And then it becomes a very holistic thing where they're empowering them for their future dreams beyond working as an artisan. They are providing childcare or tuition scholarships for their kids to go to school, so like literally the entire family and then the generation coming are impacted by their work. So I wanted to raise $10,000 for them, and I decided to do a giveaway where anybody who donated $100 last week was entered to win a trip to Kenya. So the winner gets to meet the artisans, learn how to weave. That's one of the works that they do there. Go on a safari. I mean, your trip's a trip to Kenya. I don't really think you
Yeah,
have to sell that too hard.
100%. Yeah.
Right. But on Friday of last week, when I got up Friday morning, I had only raised $1,800 of that 10,000. So I just very publicly said to people, I believe in miracles. Here's some examples. I told that story of the fridge, and I said, I just am going to believe that we're going to hit $5,000 by the end of today. And I think we ended up getting to 5,600.
I thought that was I want you to know that you encouraged me so deeply because again, like I sent you I saw your Instagram story, right, and then I
Yeah.
messaged you back and said like go get it or something like that. But again, I had two stories going on in my head. One was like, how's she gonna do how's she gonna do that? But the other one was like truly cheering you on and saying like, of course you can do that. Because I think we always have these warring, voices in our head. No matter
Sure.
how good I get at being the champion and the cheerleader, there's always going to be somebody saying she can't do that. And and then I watched your update later on. It was like 30 something hundred, and it was like 8 o'clock or whatever. And then by the end, you hit over $5,000.
Yeah.
I wanted you to come on to share this story because what I want people to do is to be as excited about the ordinary as
Mm,
they are about Chelsea Clinton coming on my podcast
right.
or this humongous nonprofit, right? That's been around for forever and they're doing huge things, the Charity Waters of the world, like that's all like great. And I love that I get to interact with some, people that have gone on to do amazing things and have tons of influence over so many amazing things, right? That's all well and good. But that's not most people. Most people are extraordinary humans like Nicole Devereaux that have marriage problems and that had to leave the city of their dreams and had all this stuff going on that took out and did something bold. And so I'm super excited that you're well on your way there. You have how many weeks left and how much money to raise? Because what I'll do is I'll put all the links and stuff in the show notes if anyone wants to help and contribute to your goals to help you get there by your 40th birthday. But yeah, give us kind of the update and how much you have left.
Yeah. So as of this recording, and obviously there'll be a delay till when people hear it, I have about 7 weeks left. So my birthday is July 14th. Let's just put that out there so you can do your own math when you
Yep.
hear this. July 14th is my birthday. I do have about $13,000 left to raise. So right now, I do have it. I'm sure you'll have this in the show notes, Nick. I have a landing page so you can see all 8 organizations that I'm supporting, and there will be an update on there of how much I've raised because some of them I did hit my goals. So not that I don't want you to give to them, but it would be nice to spread the love to
Sure.
the
Yeah.
other organizations. And they are actually, a couple of them are local to the Twin Cities where I am now. A couple are local to New York where I was, and then the other ones are national or international. So there's a lot of different causes or places that people could decide to give. Yeah, I think what I'm hoping for is A couple people reached out to me when I did the Kenya giveaway and offered to contribute something to another giveaway. So what I'm dreaming about right now, and I guess if I'm going to say it, this is going to happen,
Yeah.
is doing a giveaway the 14 days leading up to my birthday. So I'm hoping to have 14 different things that I can give away. And then as people donate on those days, they'll get entered to win those different generous gifts that other people, said, hey, this is how I can contribute. So if somebody listening has something they want to contribute to a giveaway, I would love to hear that as well. You don't have to just be somebody who wants to give financially. Maybe you have a talent or a product that you would want to do contribute that way. Just encouraging me to keep going is helpful. I don't know if I'm going to hit that 40. It's so close that it's
Yeah.
hard not to want it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, but I think this recent week was a really good boost of me saying, like, I need to keep telling the story. And I think to your point, Nick, about, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. One thing that I have to keep reminding myself is that I have to keep telling the story, and that's my job here. Is the only way this money comes in is by me telling the story. And I'm not in control of people deciding to respond or deciding to give or what they think about the organizations I chose, because I chose a lot of those organizations before some of the political climate we're in,
Mm.
where it's not as cool right now to give to an arts organization. Just honestly, arts
Yeah.
organizations are suffering because they're not doing work with immigrants at the border or refugees or whatever. And so I know that that's hard, but I still picked them because I believe that the arts actually matter in times of crisis like that. That the arts engage our minds and our hearts with the issues that matter. So I'm going on a tangent here. I guess my point is I do want to encourage anybody out there who wants to do something big to just tell that story. And
Yeah.
the more you tell the story, the more the people who want to get involved will find you, because everybody, I do think, wants to be connected to something that's bigger than ourselves. And I know for me, before I did this project, a lot of times I just felt overwhelmed. Like, there's 100 good causes to give to. How do I pick just one? I wish I was a millionaire and I could give $10,000 to every single cause that I cared about and still be able to live, like
Yeah.
I seriously felt so overwhelmed. And so doing this project forced me to have some focus and every day I know that there's other causes that I wish I were giving to, but I didn't pick them. And so this is my project right now. And this is the story that I have to tell right now. And maybe next year it will be a different one,
Mm.
So I guess I want to encourage people with that. Just like, be bold about telling the story that you care about and don't worry about the people who don't connect with it, because we're just looking for the ones who do.
I love that. No, I think people will be super encouraged by what you just shared and by your story. So here's a big looming question in my mind
Ooh.
is you're a young lady, you're 40. 40 is the new 25. I mean, come on,
Yes.
let's be real.
Hey,
Like
I love
40,
40. I've been wanting to turn 40 since I was 32. I have been waiting 8 years for
I'm
this year of
I'm
my life.
35 and I feel the same damn way. Like
Yes.
people like I just feel like 40 is going to bring I think the 40, that decade is going to be so powerful. I really feel we're not going to get in that conversation right now.
Right.
The things I'm building in my 30s, I think are really going to come to fruition in my 40s. And so I want to stay in the present in the moment because I have 5 years left in my 30s.
Yes.
But
Stay there, Nick.
but I'm so excited. So 40 is the new 25. All that to say is there's a lot of life left. Do you think you guys, you and your husband, or maybe once the kids are gone, like, do you think you'll ever move back to New York, or is that sort of is that door closed?
Oh, yeah. Um, Well, my husband and I are both, for Myers-Briggs fans out there, we're both Ps, which are open door people.
Yeah,
We like to say a door is never closed, even
yeah,
when it's locked and there's deadbolts on it. Well, you could break through. So
exactly.
I think what's important for me is to actually not be focused on will I go back, because right now that's a going back question. And
Mm,
I'm not interested in going back anywhere in my life. I'm interested in going forward. And if there is a time where going forward means returning to New York City because there's unfinished work there for me to do, or because I had to change in order to get back there, then that would be great. But honestly, right now, my take is that I went to New York to be changed and to
Mm,
be challenged. And even though it was my favorite place on earth and I felt the most myself there, maybe that was where I had to feel the most myself so I could be other places as
mm.
myself. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see then. We'll see.
We'll,
Open
we'll
door.
see. Well, it is
Who
an
who
open door,
who
yes.
knows? Who knows? Nicole, you are going to die someday, and hopefully it's so many years from now. But
Yes.
in this hypothetical scenario that I'm painting, I'm giving your eulogy.
Okay.
And so I have, at that point been a friend of yours for many, many years. And I've observed all you've done, and your family, your friends, everybody's there, everybody's present listening to me eulogize your life and legacy. What do you hope that I would say on that day?
I love this question. I hope that you would say that I embodied truth, in that I was always willing to hear truth from other people, and I always shared truth in the most loving and generous way that I could. And that more than that exchange of truthful words, that I lived a truthful life.
I love that. That's a wonderful legacy. And you're obviously well on your way to getting there if you continue to live the way that you're living right now.
Thanks, Nick.
Nicole, people I know ahead of time will be encouraged by your story and your struggles and your overcoming of those struggles and your boldness in raising this money for these organizations. So ahead of time, I just want to encourage you that people are encouraged by your
Mhm.
story, and if any specific things come in from listeners, I will definitely pass those on to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Keep on going. We're here rooting you on. And I know there's no question in my mind from the miracles you've already shared that you are going to raise the 40,000 in 40 weeks, crush it and bless and, energize these other organizations. So keep on doing your thing, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Nick. I received that truth, and I'm excited to keep hearing about all the people that are giving a damn through your podcast, through the audience, and I hope the people that are being inspired by what they're hearing here.
I'm 100% sure and convinced that Nicole encouraged you, so I won't even ask you. I mean, how could she not? What a bold damn giver she is. Friends, my challenge to you this week is simple. Say yes a little more often, and be bold when you say yes. In the business world, there is a saying, scared money doesn't make money. And I sort of think that applies here. Scared yeses don't and won't lead to giving a damn, or something like that. But say yes this week, once or twice or more, and don't wait to feel like $1 million to do something. Like Nicole, some of the best moments in life as a human trying to figure out how to do life well have come out of shitty times in my life. In other words, some of the best moments in my life have come when I didn't feel like they were the best moments in my life. I just did something and life made sense after that. So I highly encourage you to follow Nicole on Instagram at Nicole_Devereaux. That's Devereaux. Devereaux. And if you want to learn more about her 40 for 40 project, and or if you want to donate to help her reach her goals, you can visit NicoleDevereaux.com/40 for 40. All of those details, Instagram, website, her bio, everything will be in the show notes. You can find the show notes and all things Let's Give a Damn by visiting letsgiveadamn.com. If you love what we're doing on this show, please tell a friend, leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or throw a few bucks our way each month to support the production of this show by visiting patreon.com/letsgiveadamn. This podcast episode was made by me and my amazing producer, Chad Snavely. The music is by our friend and fellow damn giver, Propaganda. Make sure to check out all of his music on Spotify or wherever you listen to your music. Can't wait to spend time with you again next week, friends. I love you all. Peace.